Look in your fridge tonight. There is probably milk in it. You pour it into coffee, over cereal, into a pan. Your stomach says nothing. You have never once stopped to think that this is unusual. It is unusual. It is one of the strangest things your body does. Because for roughly the first 300,000 years of human existence, no adult on this planet could drink a glass of milk without paying for it. Not some adults. None of them. And by the end of this, you will understand something uncomfortable about how that changed. The ability sitting in your gut right now did not spread through your ancestors because milk made them healthy. It spread for a much darker reason, and scientists only managed to prove it in 2022. Start with the animal. The cow standing in a field today is a shrunken, calmed-down descendant of something called an aurochs, a wild ox. Bulls stood around 180 centimeters at the shoulder, with horns reaching 80 centimeters long. Julius Caesar, writing about the ones still alive in Europe in his time, said they were only a little below the elephant in size. Now picture the first person who walked up to one of those and reached underneath it. That is what domestication actually looked like. Not a farm, a standoff. In 2012, a team led by geneticist Ruth Bollongino, working with the University of Mainz and University College London, pulled DNA out of cattle bones dug up at Iranian archaeological sites from settlements that existed just after farming was invented. They ran the numbers backwards. Every single taurine cow alive on Earth today descends from a founding group of roughly 80 wild female aurochs tamed in the Near East around 10,500 years ago. 80 animals. That is where your milk comes from. So reconstruct the morning. You are somewhere in the Fertile Crescent, 10,000 years ago, and the sun is barely up. The animal in front of you is not tame in any sense you would recognize. It is enormous, it is nervous, and it has a calf. You have to get between them. You crouch at its flank with a clay pot balanced on the dirt, close enough that one kick would end you, and you take what the calf was going to drink. Nobody taught you this. Nobody in the history of your species has ever done it before. Then you carry the pot back, and you drink it. But that is not the strange part. The strange part is what happened when those first herders actually drank what they had taken. Every mammal on Earth is born able to digest milk. You were. A puppy is. A calf is. The sugar in milk is called lactose. And to break it down, your gut has to produce an enzyme called lactase. Every baby makes it, and in almost every mammal, including almost every human who has ever lived, the body switches that production off somewhere between weaning and adolescence. Permanently. It is not a defect. It is the factory setting. Milk is baby food, and your body was built to stop expecting it. So what happens when a lactose-intolerant adult drinks fresh milk anyway? The lactose travels through the stomach untouched and arrives in the large intestine still whole. The bacteria living there fall on it. They ferment it. Gas builds. Water is pulled into the gut. Within a couple of hours, there is bloating, cramping, and diarrhea. Now put that inside a Neolithic village. No plumbing. No clean water to replace what your body is dumping. No way to explain why the white liquid that the calf drinks happily is doubling you over behind the huts. And here is what should stop you. They kept doing it. Professor Richard Evershed, a chemist at the University of Bristol, spent years building a database that had never existed before. Nearly 7,000 animal fat residues, scraped out of 13,181 fragments of broken pottery, from 554 archaeological sites across Europe. Fat soaks into unglazed clay and stays there for thousands of years, and its chemistry says whether it came from meat or from milk. The milk fat goes back nearly 9,000 years, to the very dawn of farming. Meanwhile, ancient DNA tells a completely separate story. The genetic variant that keeps lactase switched on into adulthood, the thing scientists call lactase persistence, was not common in Europe until around 3,000 years ago. Thousands of years after the milk residues show up, sit with that gap. For roughly 4,000 years, your ancestors were milking animals, storing milk, cooking with milk, and almost none of them could actually digest it. They knew it made them sick, and they did it anyway, so they got clever. In the 1970s, an archaeologist named Peter Bogucki excavated fragments of pottery in the Kujawia region of Poland that made no sense. Flat clay vessels, punched full of small holes, about 7,000 years old. Nobody could say what they were for. Strainers for something. He noticed they looked exactly like cheese strainers he had seen hanging in an old farmhouse. Decades later, a chemist named Melanie Roffet-Salquet, then a doctoral student at Bristol, ground up a gram at a time of those shards and pulled the trapped fats out of the clay. They were dairy, not meat. The holes had strained curds from whey. That is the oldest direct evidence of cheese making anywhere in the world. And cheese is not a luxury in this story. It is a survival hack. When milk is fermented or strained into cheese and yogurt, the bacteria eat most of the lactose before you do. The sugar that was hurting them was largely gone. They could not change their bodies, so they changed the milk. But that raises a harder question. If cheese solved the problem, and it did, Why did a gene for drinking raw milk ever need to spread at all? Look east for the clue. At the Max Planck Institute, researcher Siobhan Wilkin and archaeological scientist Christina Warrener developed a way to read ancient diet from dental calculus, the hardened plaque on the teeth of the dead. Milk proteins get trapped in it and survive for thousands of years. They tested skeletons from northern Mongolia dating to roughly 1300 to 900 years before the Common Era. 7 of the 9 individuals had clearly been drinking milk from cattle, sheep, and goats. Not one of them carried the gene for digesting it. An entire dairying culture, built on milk, running on fermentation instead of genetics. Their descendants in Mongolia still largely lack the variant today, and still live on dairy. The same method turned up something even sharper out on the Eurasian steppe. Wilkin's team read the teeth of 55 people spanning thousands of years, and the switch is violent. More than 90% of the older individuals, before the Bronze Age, show no trace of dairy in their mouths at all. Then, in the early Bronze Age, 94% of them do. Milk did not creep into the human diet. It arrived like a flood into bodies that were not ready for it. So the gene was not necessary, which makes what happened in Europe genuinely bizarre, because in Europe, that variant did not just appear, it exploded. Professor Mark Thomas, an evolutionary geneticist at University College London, put it plainly. The lactase persistence variant was pushed to high frequency by some sort of turbocharged natural selection. It is one of the most strongly selected genetic traits in the last 10,000 years of human evolution. Something was killing the people who did not have it. And here is the payoff you were promised. In 2022, Thomas and Evershed published the answer in the journal Nature, using ancient DNA from more than 1,700 skeletons laid over the map of milk residues across 9,000 years. The obvious explanation was that wherever people drank the most milk, the gene spread fastest. They found no relationship at all. None. And they proved they would have detected one if it existed. Milk drinking does not explain the gene. What explains it is famine and disease. Think about what lactose intolerance actually does. On a full stomach, in a healthy adult, it is unpleasant, embarrassing, survivable. Now, take that same person during a crop failure, when milk is the only food left and refusing it means starving. Or during an outbreak, when their body is already fighting infection and already losing fluid. Now, diarrhea is not embarrassing. Now it kills. Those are the moments that did the selecting, not centuries of pleasant breakfasts. Short, brutal windows where the people without the variant died before they could have children, and the people with it survived to have them. The gene did not ride in on abundance. It rode in on hunger and plague, over and over, until it was common. Every ancestor in your line who handed you that ability was standing in the middle of one of those windows and lived. Which brings you back to your fridge. About 1/3 of adults in the world today are lactase persistent. 2/3 are not. If dairy makes you bloated, cramped, miserable, you are not broken and you are not unlucky. You are running the original human configuration, the one that ran for 300,000 years without complaint. And if you can drink it, that is not normal either. That is a scar. A mutation that spread because your ancestors were starving and sick, and it happened to be the difference between a bad week and a grave. So look in your fridge tonight. There is probably milk in it. It took 80 wild oxen, 4,000 years of stomach aches, a Polish farmer's cheese strainer, and an unbroken chain of people who survived famine to put it there.